Yes. So, Bez Hashem on Thursday, we'll be back in person. So let's see. Now we're on Mem Gimel, Gimel Amid Aleph. Towards the top of Mem Gimel, there's a parenthesis. It says Hilchas Chaver Kazayas Mara Kirkov and Simon. That's going to be the halachas that Rabbi Yitzchak Bar Yosef from Rabbi Yechon was going to tell us. There's 5 halachas there that he's going to tell us. Okay, we thank Hashem we're able to learn Torah every day. It's chus of a learning we should have Beis Hamikdash immediately. Just one of the interesting things that we had on yesterday's daf is Rachesh Bar Papa, which apparently is only here in by the Siyum. Rachesh Bar Papa said that lakusa, that if the kidney is ill, is diseased, so then that's considered a treifa. Anyway, not Rava, but Ula taught us 8 types of treifas and categories of treifas. He said, why did he say 8? He's going to exclude the 9th one, which would be Lakusa of Rachesh Bar Papa. And then we said that Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda holds that Rava says that there's 8 treifas of Nekuva. There's 8 possible punctures that could make an animal treifa. And he says 8 because he also doesn't want to tell us the 9th one. 9th one would be the mara, the gall, that according to Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda is a treifa, and he's not accepting that. Mara. Anyway, now starts with halachis in this on 43a. Chaver kazayas mar kukman sim. Am Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef am Rabbi Yochanan. Halacha Rabbi Yossi bar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that the halacha is, this is his first statement. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef name of Rabbi Yochanan, we're going to have 5 of them. His first statement is that if the gall is punctured, it's a treifa, like Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda Paskin. Number 2, Vam Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef Vam Rabbi Yochanan Maya Hadrle Chavri Le Rabbi Yosef bar Rabbi Yehuda. We know that there's a machlekes there. So we're saying now, what was the conversation?
Good morning.
Good morning, Moshe. On 43a. So what was the conversation between Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim? We know that the Brisa sometimes will add in details that the Mishnah doesn't have. So we're asking now, what was the conversation? So they said like this: Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Yehuda says that if the gall is punctured, so the animal is a treifa. Says that they told him back, Yishpech Laretz Mararti. I don't know how to read the pasuk. It's in Eiv. It says that his gall was spilling out onto the ground. He had a punctured gall. You see, Eiv was being afflicted with all types of suffering. So Vadayin Eiv came, and Eiv was still existing, even though he had a punctured gall. So you see that it's not a treifa. Amalahem. So Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Yehuda responds. It says, "Ein maskir ma'asinisi." You're telling me about miracles. You can't prove from a miracle. Yeah, it was a miracle that he was alive. You see, what happened was the Satan told Hashem that if you would make him suffer, then he would rebel against you. So he said, "Okay, you can make him suffer, but to prove this, that he's not going to rebel, but you can't take his life." So he does everything that he can to hurt Iyov without taking his life. The Gemara says in Baba Basra that the Satan had such pain. The Satan was in more pain than Iyov was. The example the Gemara gave was that if someone tells his servant to break this barrel of wine, but don't lose a drop of the wine, smash the barrel, but don't let the wine get lost. That was the difficulty that the Satan had to make Iyov suffer and also to keep him alive. Whatever, if you're going to say that Iyov wasn't a miracle, then what do you do with Yiflach Tul Yosef Layachmal, that his kidneys are wounded and there's no respite? Mika Chaya, would he be able to survive without his kidneys? They didn't have dialysis. So Ella Nisa Shiny. It was a miracle. So you don't bring a raya from Iyov. One of the interesting things that you're seeing from this Gemara is that we're comparing trephus by a human to trephus by an animal, which not necessarily is that accepted. I think it's Machlekes Tosfos in the Ramban if it works like this. But there was someone that came to one of the Rebbeim that said he has a certain disease, and the Rebbe said, travel to Eretz Yisrael, because the Beis Yosef paskins that that's not a treifa. And the Ramah here in Poland, the Ramah was in Krakow in Poland, he says over here the Ramah says Machmir, says it's a treifa. So if you go over there, you'll live. If you stay here, so also the weather's better than in Poland, so that helps. That could be the reason. Anyway, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Rabbi Yosi, Amar Rabbi Yochanan, a third statement over here. First one was that he paskins like Rabbi Yosi bar Rabbi Yehuda, about Nikva Amara. The second one was the conversation. It wasn't really a halachic thing, that was just a conversation. Now, the third one is halachic divrei Yemer Kazayas. Now, this is based on a Gemara. If the liver is removed, then the liver can regenerate if there's a little bit of the liver left. So how much left? So there's a discussion over there in the Gemara if it's the smallest amount or if it's a kazayas, an olive size. So here, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says, "Name Rabbi Yochanan that it's halachas according to one that says kazayas." Name Rabbi Yochanan, hachi. Does Rabbi Yochanan really say that it's a kazayas? From Rabbi Bar Chanan Rabbi Yochanan, a very famous statement in Shas, halacha kistam mishnah. Rabbi Yochanan always says that halacha is like stam mishnah. Yeah, that's a statement. If you want to say, tell me something that Rabbi Yochanan says throughout Shas, it would be halacha kistam mishnah. That's like the most common thing. Whenever it says halacha kistam mishnah, it's always Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Yochanan says halacha kistam mishnah utanan nitla hakavod v'leinishtayim en klum. We have a mishnah. It says that if the liver is removed and there's nothing left from the liver, so then it's a treifa. But if there would be a drop left, hanishtayer, if there would be anything left, then kshera, afagav le'evik kazayas. It doesn't have to be a kazayas, even a mashu. So the halacha should be like the Stam Mishnah, including its diuk, including what's implied from it, that even the smallest amount left, the liver could regenerate. Afagav le'evik kazayas, even if it's not a kazayas. And here you're telling me that Rabbi Yochanan holds, Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, that it needs to be a kazayas. Where it says, Amiroy nino v'aliba de Rabbi Yochanan. Now, this is very interesting because the way Rashi learns this is that Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan didn't actually say halacha kistam mishnah. Every mishnah that we quoted that Rabbi Yochanan says that the halacha is like that mishnah was not a rule as a halacha kistam mishnah. That was a specific statement that Rabbi Yochanan said the halacha is like this mishnah. It wasn't a rule. Like the grammar rules, you can put it all into a category. Or you can just say that, well, this is the case over here, because this comes from French, and so we write it differently. So you can have an exception for each one. So the Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that Rabbi Yochanan doesn't hold halacha kistam mishnah. We have all over Shas. He says that's because he said that by that mishnah, that it's not a rule. And this is based on, because here I have two mishnayos. And so, what are we going to do? Halacha, and we have two stam mishnahs that are contradictory. One says kazayas and one says v'leinishtayim en klum. So, if I would be able to ascertain which one is the stronger one, then I would have chosen that. But because here it's equal, so Rabbi Yitzchak says that it can't be that there's a rule halachic stam mishnah, and each one has its own statement. The Amar Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Amar Rabbi Yochanan. Okay, now it says over here di Amar. It's actually supposed to be vi Amar on the side. It says another statement of Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef. It's number 4. Mara shenikva b'kavod seis masa kshera. He already told us that a hole in the Mara in the Gaul, paskins like Rabbi Yitzchak, like Rabbi Yosi bar Yehuda, that it's going to be a treifa. But let's say the Gaul is attached to the liver. And in the way that it's punctured, it's pressing against, the liver's pressing against the gall, so it's sealed. So he says that it's going to be kosher. That's his statement. Now, turns out, in the halacha, about, it's brought in the Paiskim, that if the gall is missing, you can taste the liver and see if it tastes like the gall. The gall must be like a very acidic, you know. He says you're allowed to taste it with your tongue. It's a discussion if in a bird if it's missing. Yeah, when the place where I did smicha in Australia, they had us learn treifas. So then when I had my smicha program, so Rabbi Vosner that was testing, he said, you can't give Yeri Yeri without learning treifas. My grandfather said, the Shevet Halevi, says, you have to learn treifas. It's another 30 simanim of things that most people will never come in contact. Anyway, and now the fifth statement. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef, Rabbi Yochanan nikav korban kishlei kayim is kosher. Korban is the gizzard. You don't see it here, but maybe years ago you did. But in England and other places, it's very common. It's in the soup. They put it always in the soup, together with the eggs, the unformed eggs from the chicken. They also end up in the soup. They become very rubbery, and they put put in the soup, in the feet, the chicken feet. Anyway, the kurkaban is it has like flaps, it's like a little wider in the center, and then on the side it's a little thinner. But if you split it open, there's a white skin that's inside. Officially a kosher bird, you're supposed to be able to remove that skin easily. It's like a thick membrane in the center. So it says it goes like this. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Yosef says that if there's if the kurkaban is punctured, but the kiss, that skin in the inside is intact, that's fine. Then that is intact, then it's going to be kosher. Iboilu, you have a question. Nikev hakis. Let's say it's exactly the opposite. Let's say that that skin inside is punctured, the korkaban kayim, and the outside is intact. What's going to be the din? So Tashma, Rav Nachman says Nikev zeh. Now, if you look at the Bach, he adds in Nikev zeh is kosher. If one is punctured and not the other one, or they're both punctured but they're not aligned, the puncture, so then it's going to be kosher. Okay, so we have our answer. As long as they're not aligned, it's going to be kosher. And even so for sure, if nikev hakis and the korkaban is kayim, if it's intact, for sure it's kosher. Amar Rava, Shnei Eretz Yesh Levayshet. Rava says that the esophagus has two skins. There's two skins. The esophagus squeezes the food down. It like squeezes down like you would squeeze something through a pipe or something. You'd have to squeeze it and squeeze it and squeeze it, work your way through. When the kids pull the string out of their hood and you have to get it back in, you push and push it. So
peristalsis is the medical term.
What is it called?
Peristalsis.
Peristalsis.
Yeah.
Okay. So the way it works is with the two skins. Somehow they work together so that it should be able to. So he says that the chitzain is edaim, upnimi lavan. The outer skin is red and the inner skin is white. Nikav zebelezeh kosher. If the one is punctured and not the other one, it's going to be kosher. Lamali lamil mechitzin edem pnimi lavan. Okay. So, what's the relevance to the halacha that one is red and one is white? The outer one is red, the inner one's white. So, dichalav treifa, that if it's switched, somehow it's switched, you open it up and you find the outer one is white and the inner one is red, that's a treifa. It's like as if it's missing. Ibailu, they have a question. Nikvu shneim zeh. We said that if one is punctured, it's kosher. Let's say they're both punctured, but it's not aligned. By the Veshet, if it's not aligned, it's kosher. And by the korkaban, if it's not aligned, it's pasul. Maskefla Ravashi asks to Mar Sutra, who's saying in the name of Rav Papa, he says, Adarabba, Veishet the Achlabe, Upayabe, Ravach, I think they take the word Ravach out, Gamdale Upashtale. The Veishet that you eat with and that you cry with, you call with. So it expands and it shrinks. So Zimnin the mehandazin bahadi adadi. There's going to be times when it's aligned and sometimes when it's not, depending on how you're stretching it. It's going to end up like in different positions. So it could be right now it's not aligned, but at one point there was a puncture that went straight through. So and you're telling me over there that it's going to be korkaban the menach naich the kai, but a korkaban that stays straight and it doesn't expand and do all these things. So you're telling me that that's going to be treif if it's going to be a whole shleikeneged. Obviously, each one was punctured independently and they're not aligned. It's not a whole through and through. The truth is that Mar Zutra actually said it in your way, exactly the opposite. The baya korkaban, if it's not aligned, then it's going to be kosher. And by the Veished, if it's not aligned, it's going to be treif. Because the Veished, even though it's not aligned right now when you found it, but that doesn't mean that it wasn't aligned at one point. It could be that it was because of the way it stretches. I have to tell you the Korkaban joke that there was a Rav that he learned Hilchas Treifus and this. Anyway, they bring him a shaila. So he opens up it was a chicken. He opens up the inside. He says, look, I don't know what's going on in the chicken, but all I can tell you is that if this is a korkaban, then it's going to be treif. If it's a mara, then it's going to be kosher. If it's a this, So that was the joke that we said that like the person doesn't know the kitchen, he just knows the textbook, If it's a korkaban, okay. Amar Rabba. Rabba says, Krum shalom achmasmaka beveshed ein a krum. It's a very important Rashi over here. You have a traditional Gemara, the second to the bottom line. Rashi says, the kol nekuve trefis lemahanu listima, the salkol behu lachas man v'leidami l'reya shenikva v'daifen sismasa, listimas covered b'mar listimas yirechayim b'cholchelos del kaman dehistima mikari. Rashi says at any time there's a scar tissue that covers over a puncture, it's never acceptable because it's not going to hold. The salka behu la'achar it's not going to last. So now they have a discussion based on this Rashi that let's say it was a surgery. What's the reason why scar tissue doesn't? What's the reason why we don't accept it? Is because it's not going to last. But let's say they did a surgery and they actually sewed it up and it is going to last. Would that change? However, so there's two diukim in Rashi here. The first one is the salka behu la'achar zman, because it's not going to last. Then Rashi says, however, there are exceptions where cases where things were sealed, dahi stima mi'ikari, because that was closed originally. Now you have two pshatim, two ways of understanding. Do we say that scar tissue isn't good is because there was a moment when it was a treifa? So I don't care if you did a surgery and you sewed it up and it's going to last, because over there where it's kasha is because stima mi'ikara, it was there originally and it was never a treifa. Yeah, it has a hole, but the hole was always sealed because it was pushing against the side of the animal that always sealed it up. There was never a moment of it. What do we learn? Like the beginning of Rashi, where Rashi says that it's not going to hold, but if it would hold, then it would be kosher. So it's a nafkamina in the surgeries that they do on the animals. They do on cow, on the dairy cows. They do these different surgeries on them. So 1 second, I didn't explain. Rabba says that if a membrane comes, grows on the Veshed, we don't consider that membrane anything, and we consider it treif. Yeah, if a membrane grows on the Veshed. In other words, a scar tissue covers up a hole, we don't count it. Amar Rabba says Veishet ain't lebedikim b'vachutz el mifnim. If there's a hole in the veishet, you can't check it on the outside because the outside is red, so you won't be able to see the hole. But if you check it on the inside, oh, I'm sorry, I gave away the Gemara. Spoiler alert. L'may nafkamina, what's the difference? What's the difference? Okay, yeah. L'safik drusa. Drusa is going to be a sugya later on, where if an animal is attacked and all the other animals all around are squawking and squealing that the one animal is being attacked and this animal is silent. That's a classical drusa. I actually watched this on 177th. We have the blackbirds, like they're like small vultures. We have these. Anyway, he was taking like a little bird. I don't know what type of bird it was, but probably like a what do they call it? Mockingbird. They make a lot of noises. So and all the other birds around were screaming, and this vulture was like just going for it. I didn't step in. I don't know if humans are supposed to interfere with nature, but yeah, and there was a real Drusa case, and then he picked it up and he took it away. So what happens by a Drusa is that you have to check. You have to check the neck. You have to check it to see if the animal leaves it alone afterwards. You have to check what happened. Was it clawed and all of these things? It could be a treifa. So when you check it, you can't check the outside. You have to check the inside of the veshet because you won't be able to tell on the outside if it's red because when it gets clawed, so it leaves like it leaves that area red. But here by the veshet's anyways red. So you have to check it on the inside. There was one time such a story, Safik Drusa. They didn't know if it got clawed. And Havikabadik le Rabba leveshet me'avroi. Rabba was checking the veshet. They would bring animals to the Rav. Someone described it to me that the Lower East Side years ago, Rav Moshe would walk down the street and there were ladies standing there with chickens and different things, and he would like come by and just as he's walking to shul, they were standing there. Anyway, they brought it to Rabba. Rabba's checking the veshet on the outside. Abaya says, but you, Master Rabba, Abaya grew up by Rabba. So he's his teacher. He calls him Master. The Master said that you have to check it on the inside. You're checking it on the outside. Abchei Rabba flipped it inside out, and then he checked it. It turned out that there was blood on it. But Tarfei Rabba made it treif. Now the kasha is, what was Rabba doing? It says Rabba nama lechadudi da Abayu da Abayi. Rabba was just checking if Abayu is paying attention. He was, and it turns out that we have a bunch of Gemaras where Rabba does this. Rabba was this master teacher where he would make mistakes and to see if people are listening. It's like these Balkairas that want to get more action and show. They say he instead of who, and everyone shouts out, and they love it. Okay, makes everyone happy. Amar Ula. Ula says, Yashav lakaitz beveshet ein chaysin shem hivri. Ula says that if there is a thorn in the veshet, so you don't suspect shema hivri. You don't suspect now. Hivri usually means to heal. Actually, what it means is you don't suspect that it was nikiv and then it healed, but you say it was lachatchila. It was perfectly fine the whole time. Now, Yashav lakaitz beveshet actually means it's embedded. Not just that it was inside the neck. Yashav means that it's embedded, that it's stuck inside. So, but obviously it didn't go through and through. We don't suspect that it went through and through. Okay, now, Daras Chatiches Besakin Tameya Simon. Lu'ula Maishna Misafik Drusa. Why by a Safik Drusa do we say that it's going to be treif and you have to check it? And here you can't check it, Rashi says, because here the thorn is on the inside. The inside you could check. The outside you can't check because the outside is red. So maybe we should just say that it's treif, just like the suffix drusa. He says, Ula in cheshin l'suffix drusa. Ula that said this halacha, he says also holds by the suffix drusa is not a problem. Okay, now the Gemara goes on. Maishna mishnei chatichas achas shel chelev achas shel shuman. But if you have two chatichas, one is treif, two pieces of meat, one is treif. We don't say that it's fine. If someone ate one of them, he has to bring an ashram tali for the suffix. Here also we should say that there's a problem. One of the skins is punctured, and one isn't. Because we should say that that there's a problem. The Gemara says, one second, Hasam is chazak kisura. Over there, I know that there's a treif. That one of them is treif. Here we don't know if there's a treif. We don't know if it went through both of them. We're like doing these funny comparisons here. Over there, we also have a suffix. If someone shechs and it turns out that after the shechita, he sees that the knife had a problem. Now, before the shechita, the knife was good. Afterwards, the knife has a problem. We say we have to go back all the way till the one where he knew that it was good, and all in the middle is treif. So Hasam Isyal the Reyes Besakin over there, I see that right now the knife is not good. So therefore, there's a Reyesa, there's a reason to assume that there's a problem here. We have other doubts where we see where machmer, if there's something got touched by it, we're not sure if it got touched, if it touched tumah, and it's in a rishus hayachid, in a private domain, we say that it's tummy. We learn from a saita, as we'll see in a moment. We say that it's tummy. It says all the time, why don't you compare it to opposite? So we learn from a saita that that if when do we say there's tumah? Only if they were secluded. But if it's in a public area, we say that they're fine. So we learn that also by other types of tumah, even though that it doesn't have the same logic. But the other types of tumah also we say in a Rishus Rabbim, we say that it's tar. It says Hasam Ilchas Gemir Lamisaita. Over there, we have a tradition, halacha Moshe Sinai, that we learn from Saita, those two halachas. You can't compare it to us. Amlu Rav Kana. I'm sorry, I skipped the line. Yosef Ahumi Rabbanan Kamid Rav Kana. There was a student that was sitting in front of Rav Kana. Yosef Kamar Nimtzis Itmar. When you go back to Ula said Yashav Lakait Beveshet. There was a thorn that was wedged, that was embedded into the neck of the esophagus. The student said, not that it was embedded into the skin, rather you found it. When you did the shechita, afterwards you opened it up and you found that it was eating. One of the things that was eating was a thorn. Aval Yashav Cheshinin. But if it was actually embedded into one of the skins, then that would be a problem. So Ula's heter is not much of a heter. You opened it up, you found that it was eating cereal. I don't know what they eat. Not Fruity Pebbles, but they eat whatever grain they eat. And together with that was a thorn. So he said, okay, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. But if there would actually be stuck into the neck, then that would be a problem. So Amalu Rav Kana says to them, to the other students, don't listen to him. Yashav Itmar, no. Rav Ula's halacha was even if it was embedded in the neck. Aval Nimtzis, if it would just be found in the neck, that's what he's eating. I don't need Ula to tell me that. The Kulei Chive Braisa Koitze Achlin. All animals on the outside, they always eat thorns. That's what they eat. They eat thorns. That would be no chiddush. Okay, Itmar. You have a statement, Tarbet Saveshet. Tarbet Saveshet is the top. I don't know exactly what it's called. Let me see. It's called... Okay, they also say the entrance of the gullet. Tarbets, they say, this is an uncommon term, sometimes rendered tarbets, and it refers to the upper part of the gullet adjacent to the throat. Some understand, based on the aruch, that the word is Aramaic and it means courtyard. And so it refers to the entrance area immediately outside the gullet. Some add that the courtyard is always wider than the entrance to the house itself. Now, there's a discussion here
Rabbi, that's
Yeah.
we would call that the posterior pharynx, right behind the tonsils. It's very
Uh-huh.
wide, and then goes into the esophagus or to the windpipe. But I think that's the area they're talking about.
It has like a hood. You know what
Well,
I'm talking about?
yeah,
Right. Okay, so the Gemara says like this: Tarbet Saveshet. If there's a hole in the Tarbet Saveshet. Now the Veshet we learned that if there's a hole in the inside, then it's a problem, right? If it's the hole that's through and through is a problem. Rav Amar b'mashu. Rav says even a small hole. Shmuel Amar berubai. No, only if it's majority severed. Rav Amar b'mashu. Rav says even a drop makam shchiti. He says that it's considered the tarbet zaveshet. This upper part of the veshet is considered the place of the shchita. So he's called. It's therefore it's the veshet. So if you can shach there, then it's the veshet. What's the halacha by a veshet? Nikev is a treifa. Shmuel Amar Beruba, Shmuel says only the majority because he holds that lav makam shchita. It's not the place of the shchita. So therefore, that's not part of the veshet. So it has its own halachas. Hi near tarbetz veshet. What is exactly a tarbetz veshet? Amar Mari bar Mar Ukva Amar Shmuel. Say in the name of Shmuel, Mari bar Mar Ukva says kol shechitcha yumarchiv. Anything that when you cut it, it spreads out. Now, there's two types of spreading out. Spreading out means you cut it and it opens like that. And also here, because it's a tube, so when you cut it, it could either fold inward or it can fold outward. The veshet itself folds inward. Here, this part just loosens up and folds out and like falls over. The question is, where's the tension? Tension is it being pulled apart or pulled close? So he says, if it falls outward, so then it gets wider. If it stays still, this is what we're saying in the name of Shmuel. If it stays still, then that's the Beshet. Well, Rav Papi says, Marley Amarachi. The master didn't say that. Now here it's not the one who he's talking to. Who's the master? Over here, Manu, who's the master? Rav Bevi Barabaya. Rav Bibi Barabaya. He was the one we had in Brachas. Remember, he's the one that tried to take the ashes and put it in to find the time when Hashem gets angry or something when the rooster turns red. Bibi Barabaya. If it stays still, it stays intact place, it doesn't fall over, that's a tarbish rate. It's exactly the opposite. It falls inward. That's when that's the veshet. Yoina Amar Zera, they actually switch it to Rav Yoina and Amar Rav Zera. Mavlata. It's Mavlata means that it's exactly right by the veshet. The kama. There's an interesting pshat here. One pshat here is that Yoina is not Rav Yoina. I was saying that based on what it says on the side, it says Rav Yoina in the Shita Mekubetzes Aleph. Rav Yoina Amar Rab Zera Mavlata. Which means the throat, the Beis Abliya. Here, there's another interpretation that Yoina regarding a dove, Amar Zera, Rab Zera says, yeah, and they're talking about where's the Tarbet Salvation. Okay. The Kama, how big is this area? Amar Rav Avia Pachas Misarta Vadif Michitza. It says that it's less than a barley, but it's more than a wheat kernel. It's a small area on the top of the veshet that this would be that's considered part of the veshet. Hu Tura the Havelivnei Rav Ukva. there was a certain ox that belonged to Bnei, the sons of Rav Ukva. We had before Mar Ukva. I bet it's the same. Mar Ukva, Rav Ukva. The shchita, the sheichet, started a little bit too high. He started in the tarbet savation, which is the upper part of the throat, instead of lower down. But what happened was he moved his way back in line, so he made it back in line. Gomer beveshet. He finished in the right area. Amar Rava says this is a problem. I'm going to put on it the chumras of Rav, the chumrah of Shmuel, and it's going to be treif. Now, the chumrah of Rav, if you remember, Rav said that the tarbet saveshet is the veshet. Everything should be good, right? Shmuel says that it's not. So Shmuel, according to Shmuel, this is called hagrama, where you start the shchita in the wrong place and then you move it back into line. So according to Shmuel, we have a problem. According to Rav, everything should be fine. He explains like this. He says, Chumri de Rav, what's the chumra of Rav? He says, Dama Rav Mashu. Rav says that since before the shchita, which was by the veshet, you already cut the tarbet saveshet. But Rav holds the tarbet saveshet. If it has a small hole, it's already treif. So you punctured the tarbet saveshet, and then you did the shchita in the veshet. So it's treif according to Rav. Dama Mashu. The Gemara asks, Rav makom shchita, but you can't say that that's a punctured veshet, because Rav says that that's a regular shchita. Why even does Rav say that that's a problem? Because it's the veshet. And now it says, well, I'm going to go like Shmuel. That Shmuel says it's not the makom shchita. So basically, according to Rav, you punctured the veshet before the shchita, and Shmuel says that that's not the place of shchita. Damalav makom shchita. So it says, one second, Shmuel doesn't hold that would be a problem. Because Amar Beruba, right? Shmuel would only hold that he had to have cut the majority of it in order for it to be treif. And if you want to follow Shmuel, so follow Shmuel. He says, no, I'm not following Shmuel. I'm following Rav. Amar Mashu. Rav Mashu. Well, that's like a little frustrating. So he takes the chumras of both. So Igalgal Milsa Matal Kamidir Rababa. This halacha ended up in front of Rababa. Amalu Tura, it says, Bein l'Rav, Bein l'Shmuel Shari. It's exactly the opposite. It says, this ox, whether you follow Rav, whether you follow Shmuel, it's going to be mutter. Zilu Emrele lebreder Rav Yosef Bar Chama, the l'shalad meitur l'mari. He says, go tell the son of Rav Yosef Bar Chama, which is Rava. Rava's name was Rava Bar Yosef Bar Chama. Go tell the son of Rav Yosef Bar Chama that he owes the owner of the ox the money because he paskined wrong. Amar Mar Bered Ravina. So Mar Bered Ravina says, this is a euphemism. He says, I'm going to have a question on the enemies of Rava, which actually he means Rava. But always, when you talk about someone, you say, like, Hashem brings a punishment on the enemies of the Jews. You say it like that. You don't say, you make it you use a euphemism. You say the Beis HaChaim, right? Lo'ilam hilchasa kedivrei Beis Hillel. We have a statement. The Brisa says that we always pass him like Beis Hillel. If you want to go like Beis Shammai, oisa kedivrei Beis Hillel. If you want to go like Beis Hillel, oisa mikula Beis Shammai, mikula Beis Hillel. If you take the leniences of everyone, then that's a rasha. Mechumrei Beis Shammai, mechumrei Beis Hillel. If you take the stringencies of both, then Allah says the fool walks in darkness. If you want to follow Beis Shammai, then you take the kulas and the chumras. If you want to follow Beis Hillel, you take the kulas and the chumras. It's a package deal. Umar says, Hagufa kasha, 1 second. It's only these. This is only when they clearly contradict, that the two chumras are contradictory. You're allowed to take chumras, but they can't be contradictory. So Haguf Kasha Amrit Leila Malachik Divrei Sila. First we say that Allah is like Beis Hillel. And then you say that you can do what you want. You can go like Beis Shammai as well. When it says like Kasha kan the Baskel kan lacha Baskel. Depends. There was a Baskel that came out that said that halacha is like Beis Hillel. When did the Baskel come out? I think it says in the Yerushalmi, it says it came out in Yavne. In Yavne, they had a Baskel that halacha is like Beis Hillel. Yiba Yisema. So therefore, if you wanted to paskin like Beis Shammai before the Baskel, fine. After the Baskel, you can't paskin like Beis Shammai. This is a whole question. I thought we don't paskin like a Baskel. That's a Taisvis discussion. Rabbi Yeshua, let's see it on the top of the page. This Taisvis is in several places. Iba Yisema Flacha Baskel. Rabbi Yeshua, Damrei Mashkichim beBaskel. If you want, you could say that we're talking about after the Baskel. But it's following the opinion of Rabbi Shua that says we don't follow a Baskel. Now Rabbi Shua was in his machlekes with Rabbi Eliezer by the Tanner Achnai. That oven was a big machlekes where they said the stream outside should prove that Rabbi Eliezer is correct, and it went in the other direction. It started the tree should prove, and it got uprooted. And then the walls of the Beis Medrash came in, and then started to cave in. Rabbi Shua said no, stop. And then he said, okay, the heavens will. And the heaven said that halacha is like Rebbe Lezer, and Rabbi Shua says, "Hey, mashkichim beBaskel, they don't paskin for us." So, if according to Rabbi Shua, according to Rabbi Shua, you don't have to paskin like the Baskel, and therefore you can follow Beis Shammai. It's very interesting because in a machlekes between Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Eliezer is more Shammai leaning. Rabbi Eliezer, the Gemara says, Shamuti. Rabbi Eliezer is a Talmud of Beis Shammai. Rabbi Eliezer ben Hurkanes. And here I have Rabbi Yeshua who argues with Rabbi Eliezer. He's ein mashkichim beBaskel, and the Baskel says he paskin like Beis Hillel, which means Rabbi Yeshua is the one that actually has this Beis Shammai allowance that. It's very interesting. Nevertheless, we have a question. How could Rava, back on Rava, how could Rava go like two contradictions? He's paskin like Rab, he paskin like Shmuel. It was clearly contradictory. Amar Rav Tavus, that's a new name for us. Kula Karav Avda. Really, he's paskin like Rav. Rami Bar Yecheskel Amar, when Rami Bar Yecheskel came, he said, don't listen to my brother Yehuda that says these things, these rules in the name of Rav. In other words, Rav Yehuda Bar Yecheskel, who's the famous Rav Yehuda Marav, has a brother. His brother's name is Rami Bar Yecheskel. Now, Rami Bar Yecheskel says, don't listen to my brother's teaching. The most common teaching in Shas is Amar Rav Yehuda Marav. Anyway, Rami Bar Yecheskel says, don't listen to Rav Yehuda, my brother. He says the name of Rav. See, what Rav Yehuda said in the name of Rav is that what's the reason why Rav says that it's going to be treif, that if it's punctured over there in the Tarbitz of Veshet, because it's considered the Veshet. He says that it's not so. Hachiyam Rav, Veshet nasan by Chacham Shir, Bechlal the Tarbitz of Veshet, Lam Makam Shchiti, Ukamer B'mashu. He says that only the Veshet is allowed for Shchita. Nevertheless, the Tarbitz Aveshet is also even a mashu. Mailad Kama. How high can you go up? I think it's referring to the Shchita. Amar Rab Nachman Ad kan tfisas yad. Ad kadei tfisas yad. He says, as much as you can grip. What would that mean? Kadei tfisas yad. That means 3 fingers from the head. And Lamata ad Kama, how far down can you do a shchita? Amar Rav Nachman Amar Ravu ad Kadesh Yasher, until the area has here, because it's already on the stomach. Eini, is that so? Let's just finish till Amar Rav Nachman. Eini, is that so? Amar Ravina, Amar Geniva Mishmei Rav, Tefach Beveshet Samach Lekeres Zeo Keres Panimi. Amai Kashachet Bekeres Kashachet. Kashachet Bekeres Kashachet. But Ravina says that a tefach, the lowest tefach of the veshet, is considered is the stomach. According to Rav Nachman, when you're shechting down there and that part, you're already shechting in the stomach. It's not the veshet anymore. When it says ema tefach bekaris samach leveshet zeukaris panimi, it's not a tefach of the veshet. It's a tefach into the stomach. That's considered the inner stomach. But the lower part of the veshet, that's perfectly fine. Or we could say that Rav was talking about a tura, an ox, or a bull, which over there's more here. And so therefore, where are we saying Kikam Rav? Oh, Mishmei de Rav. Tefach beveshet samach lekeres. That lower tefach is the keres, because he's talking about a tura which has extra here. So therefore, the lower part is actually that part would actually be kosher, because the hair starts to grow up the neck by a tura. By other animals, though, so I think I'm saying it backwards. You come off tefach with tura the masha tvei. So really, the makom shchita goes until where the hair is, according to Rav. According to Rav, till where the hair is. Okay, let's leave this tomorrow. They'll discuss it again. Okay.
Okay, shukayach. Have a good day, good chodesh.
For the stove. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Have a good day, everyone.
You too.